Hi, welcome to You Belong Here, the place to be for positive stories of immigrant women from all around the world. And today you will get a chance to meet inspiring women sharing their successes, challenges, and how they are living meaningful American dreams beyond professional and financial success. I am Porcia Chen Silverberg. This production of You Belong Here is coming to you from Palo Alto, California. My guests today are Vivienne Xu and Meena Sankaran. Vivienne is a social entrepreneur who founded the company Lend Donate. She was an investment executive who frequently guested on CNBC and has been a volunteer nonprofit fundraiser for many years. Meena is a social entrepreneur, tech innovator, nonprofit leader, and a NASDAQ milestone maker. She makes a difference by supporting refugees, empowering women, and providing safe drinking water. Meena's been featured in Forbes, and she was a UN Summit speaker on clean water and sanitation. Wow. I am so excited to have both of you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
This is so fun and so great. I can't wait to hear your stories. And I know by the end of our time together, I hope that viewers will get a chance to pick up some tips on how to feel a sense of belonging as an immigrant and as a woman, as well as maybe some pointers on how to get started with community giving, community volunteerism, and maybe a thing or two about learning, speaking English, or any other things that you feel would be helpful to our viewers. So before we get there, though, I really want to hear about how you two ladies got here. I know, Meena, you came as a student, so why don't we start with you? What was your journey? What brought you here?
You know, it's a fantastic journey where I feel like it just happened a while ago, even though it's been over 16 years. Wow. And I came as a student immigrant, and I had less than $400. And so it was not one of those, you know, students that are coming in with your cell phone, your iPad, you got your laptop, you have your entire tuition paid for. So I think it sort of taught me survival skills. It taught me how to really trust and have faith in yourself and really come into a foreign country and build your life from scratch, because if there's a country that can provide you that environment, it's the United States.
Yes.
And it has been terrific in terms of the kind of people that have come into my life, with, you know, one of the first being my professor from my undergrad, from my grad school in Texas, you know, Dr. Black, who's no more, but is probably one of the kindest souls, who'll always leave a mark in my life. And they're like surrogate parents to me, but he's sort of the person who's introduced Halloween to me, and he had me take his grandchildren trick-or-treating, and I was like, what is this? You had me dressed as a witch. And but just in terms of assimilating you into their culture, when they knew that nobody was around for you as a family, and I was all alone in this country in terms of my roots, and, you know, in my first airplane ride to come into the US. So there's, you know, you don't even realize how that inherent support system gets built in. And I have a ton of stories to share, but I'm also very eager to hear a lot about Vivienne. And but I think in general, people should realize that there's a lot of goodness out there, and there are a lot of people who want to help you. So never hesitate to ask for help, but also just believe in yourself and just keep persistently persevering. And I think without patience, none of that will happen. So one of the three things I always strive by is patience, my 3 Ps, my patience, perseverance, and persistence. It can take you a long way. And you don't have to look where you're headed all the way. You don't have to know your end destination, but just take that next step. for me was, how am I paying my college tuition? Am I going to pay for my rent, my food, my books? That's all that mattered for the first couple of years. Now it's like, oh, I've been able to buy my parents a house and uplift their lives, and that's what's rewarding. And to have a full circle where I can have my own nonprofit and give that back to the United States and be in this community. And it doesn't even feel like whether it's the US, this is home and this is our community, and how can we make this a better place such that it's given us so much.
I love that. And you came from India.
Yeah.
Right?
I grew up in Mumbai, and my parents still live in Mumbai. And my sister's still in India, so my entire family's still there. Wow. And you know, they'll visit as much as they can, but I think my life is here, and I feel a very strong sense of belonging here in terms of what I can contribute here. But at the same time, I view myself as a very global citizen, and I think the world is becoming all about global citizens, and I think that's how the youth sees it. So the faster we sort of eliminate those boundaries in terms of how we embrace people and embrace cultures, I think we have a lot to learn, and can only strengthen our sort of fortitude in how we look at things.
That's great. Beautiful. And Vivienne, I know we share a little bit of background. You came to the U.S. when you were 13.
That's right.
From Hong Kong, though.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us about that. How did you land where you are to be a tech startup, and you know?
It has been a long journey. So more than 16, I've been in this country for more than 30 years.
Wow.
It was a family decision. Our whole family immigrated. My sister and her family first in the 70s. And then when my parents decided, okay, next batch, right? Next kids, we went to her, and she was living in Des Moines, Iowa. So I went from Hong Kong to Des Moines as a 13-year-old. You know, it has its interesting moments because I think it helped in many ways, surprisingly, because I think it's a combination of a teenage arrogance and a little bit of that Hong Kong arrogance too. Hong Kong people, at least at the time, felt very adaptable. So I felt like, yeah, you know, I don't need to fit in. I can be here, and you know, I'm like an observer. In my mind, it was a little bit like that. But yet I wanted to fit in. So, and everyone was so, you know, if you've been to the Midwest, everyone's so sincere and genuine.
Right.
Helped me integrate into the community, to school. Certainly having my sister's family there, who has been there for a long time, did help a lot for me to assimilate into the culture. So then, you know, upon decision of making, like, where do I go for college, I have another sister that went to UC Berkeley first. And so she said, just come here.
Nice.
And in a way that I said, well.
Oh, yeah, because it's so easy to just get into Berkeley. Yeah.
And so I actually did ask, well, what other schools should I apply to? Because what if I don't get in?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, no, just apply to this one. If you don't get in, you can go to two-year junior college first and then transfer. Well, I fortunately, I guess I did. I didn't have to reapply in 2 years, but that's kind of how I ended up in the Bay Area.
Wow. Yeah. From Des Moines to Bay Area to Berkeley.
That's right.
That's a little bit of a transition.
A little bit. Not to say, you know, at that age, my English wasn't, we studied English grammar in Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
However, my vocabulary was lacking, practice was lacking, I was timid. So I understood a lot, but I didn't say a lot. So now some of my high school friends, you know, at 20th reunion saying, you're talking a lot now than when we were before. So, you know, I still remember back, you know, first year, 8th grade, I had to take those standardized tests, Iowa test of basic skills. I think they're equivalent tests in California. And I got the results back. You know, it's in percentile. My English was the 8th percentile, meaning I was only better than 8% of the kids in the state. So, you know, of course, my heart drops.
Yeah.
But the teachers were so supportive, pulled me aside and said, you know, you're barely here. You get there. And so I think eventually I got there.
So yeah, so you had to learn how to speak English.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
and I think there's a lot of lessons there. Maybe you can offer, because I went through the same thing. I was also 13, and I grew up in Denver. So same thing, in a very white community. I was the only Chinese in my entire high school, not just in my class. I was the only one. So it was interesting, but I too, like you, Meena, just so touched by the generosity of Americans and how we had so many friends. They just took us in. And, you know, it was just so wonderful. I think that's part of why I love being American so much, because there's such a sense of optimism and generosity and helping one another, that sense of community. In general, of course, there are always exceptions, but that was my experience too, for the most part. And so you spoke English when you came.
Yes. I mean, contrary to some people, I don't know if everyone realizes it, because some people ask me, "Oh, you speak good English?" It's like, well, I learned English from the time I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, in India.
Because in India, every kid, depending on public or private school, but most kids speak English, because no matter which part of the country you go, you land up finding people always knowing. I mean, they may not have the American accent or different accents, but in terms of just English, but it's more British English. Right? But so there are always the goofy words that I come in and I'll be like, you know, where's the lift? And they'll look at me, you mean the elevator? Or, you know, just like, so there's a lot of those terminology, and I still tend to use some words that I'll have some, you know, my husband look at me like, what was that again? But so I think I still tend to get those, but I think English was a huge asset for me, which was a strength, because I was blessed that I knew English speaking and coming into the country. But for me, it was more about just assimilating, because here's my first flight, had not, you know, had a very modest upbringing, and then my first airplane ride, I land in Texas. And in the world, and so coming into Texas and being a vegetarian my entire life, it was interesting. I had to tell them it was more than a tomato and a slice of, you know, spinach here and there. Like there was more to vegetarian food for me, just back then. But just a few people. But the amount of lovingness to accommodate that, and then learn from, oh, how do you cook vegetarian besides a salad? What are some of the ingredients you use? And then it was just like, all right, she's going to be the chef, you know, start making stuff. But I think people have been amazing, and I've learned a lot, all the way from a taxi driver, you know, back then there were no Uber, so from the taxi driver to a person helping you find a home, to everybody who opened their home to me, and, you know, post-graduation, people we've worked, friends. I think I have too many surrogate parents, I think, over the years. Everyone claiming they're my surrogate parents. But one of the kindest gestures that I'll never forget is also one of my late professors who adopted a kid years after, you know, we've been close, and he named his kid Meena. And I was just very, very touched, very touched. But, and, you know, also contrary, like people think that, you know, how are you going to experience life because you're, you know, you're brown? Are you going to be okay in the Midwest or something? You know, I'm sure people may have mixed reactions and stuff, but I would say I'm blessed that my experiences so far have just been with people really wanting to empower you and uplift you. So you feel nothing but, when do I get to give back? When do I get to grow to a place where I can do more? How do I do more? And what all can I be doing?
Well, in fact, I was so excited when I was planning for this show, because both of you have very interesting organizations. You're both startups, right? And you're kind of a serial entrepreneur. And Vivienne, you have started this really amazing organization that helps to loan money to nonprofits. So your company is so much more than just making a profit. You are making a difference. So I feel like today our theme for this show is doing well as doing good, because it's not an either or. It actually could be both. And I believe you both are doing that. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your work, and maybe in your nonprofit, in your tech company too. Love to hear the connections, how, you know, you came from $400 in your pocket, you came from a 13-year-old in Des Moines into now being, I mean, it just sounds funny.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
I love
We love
Iowa.
Iowans. It's just such an interesting journey.
It's an interesting transition.
Yes, yes. So love to hear about that, Vivienne.
All right, I'll start first, I guess. My background, actually, up until I started my company in 2015, has been mostly in financial service, actually all in financial services, mostly in investment management. I've worked for Schwab, American Century Investments, where I manage mutual fund portfolios. And so thinking about investment products is very much a daily thing, managing products, what product to launch. That was on the one side of my mind.
Wow.
On the other side of my mind, like by day I do that, by weekend I do nonprofit volunteer work. And so done various types of volunteer, specifically in the last dozen years or so. It's been focused on fundraising. And
bless you.
Fundraising, you know, it is very, very challenging.
Yes.
And I felt that, and I still feel that, we've almost created it to be that challenging ourselves. We put a lot of roadblocks in front of us. We want the nonprofits to be efficient, but yet the whole infrastructure is not set up to be efficient. So later on, I got the idea that, hey, why not do this, which eventually became Lend Donate. So we are a marketplace platform where a nonprofit can apply for a loan, for whether it is for a bridge loan, for construction, for equipment. We're not so caring about like how you use it. We focus on whether they have the ability to repay. That I feel that is one missing component for the impact investors to start funneling money towards this area. If it's too casual, not treated as investment, with investment discipline, purely from a philanthropic standpoint, it's very needed. But the available capital size is smaller. Like what we have now, I feel that it's this size, but it can be that, as long as now we can connect in a better, more efficient way. So our platform allows people to choose whether they donate, they lend, and if they want to lend, they can choose to be philanthropic rate, right? Instead of taking the market rate, say, oh, for this one, I'll drop a couple of percent.
Right.
Yeah.
You express philanthropy in your own way.
How cool is that? Trailblazing.
You might be getting some customers soon.
Call 800.
Yeah, we'll hook you up. That's great. And Meena?
So my background's actually more electrical engineering, electronics communication engineering. So spent pretty much 16 years of my life doing a lot of just data center, core infrastructure, and sort of all the technology buzz around Palo Alto and Silicon Valley and everything that we have here. Worked for a lot of big companies, small companies, startups. And I didn't realize how many similar things we had here because I did work for some financial institutions too over the years. And started again in 2015. It's like, I wonder if Portia already knew that connection, bringing us together.
I knew I was bringing the dynamic duo.
But, you know, it's sort of 2015 was, you know, a year of changes because I sort of hit a path where, you know, for me, volunteering is just inherent in my DNA, seeing how incredible my parents are. For them, service or seva, which is a word in Hindi or Sanskrit, is just something that's part of life, regardless of how much you make or how much you have. That's just part of who you are. And so it was never done for a resume or for something, you know, to brag about. So volunteering was just inherent. And I volunteered for many things, recording for Blind and Dyslexic and other organizations. And at some point in 2006, around 2006-07, I started working a lot with refugees in Arizona. And I realized the gaps and then started building a program, just pure word of mouth, asking friends and people to help. And over a period of time, it landed up, you know, sort of helping a lot of families. And I realized how much the need existed to really help the people who are already in the country, give them the tools to make them constructive, productive, sort of sustainable citizens, and really teach them how to fish rather than just giving them a donation check.
Right.
And so the whole program was built around that, and I realized that my intent was to make it an all-volunteer organization. So around 2015, I made it an official 501c3 when it came to Bay Area, and you know, over the last couple of years, we've served over 145 refugees, all led by women. And you know, I'm blessed again for incredible number of volunteers as an all-volunteer organization, completely through crowdfunding. So hey, watch out, come in there.
Yes.
But you know, what amazes me is how many of our refugees already have become translators for me to help the new families. They teach them how to drive. I mean, I can go on and on, but it's something I'm so passionate about that I can, you know, just take off there. But there's just a lot of value in and fulfillment for me in seeing that. But another part of me, the tech side of me that's always drawn so much to tech, always believed that, you know, what's the impact from all this technology and what is this learning applied to? And, you know, for some folks, they derive their sort of satisfaction in multiple ways. And for me, it had to be an intersection of technology with impact. So I founded, you know, Ketos, which is where I'm founder and the CEO of. It's a water analytics company. It's an intersection of, you know, everything you hear about smart connected networks and smart cities and smart villages, but bringing that with true water analytics about how does that impact your public health? How does that impact really understanding water? And we believe that we can change how businesses and people look at water, whether it's industrial or agriculture, because drinking water is still a small percentage of how water gets utilized and circular. And I mean, the economies need to be understood. And water is something we all take for granted so easily. And so a lot of work to be done there, but it's been fantastic last few years, and we've had great strides in deploying across US, India, and Mexico so far.
Wow, that is phenomenal. You're both game-changing our community and you around the world. So I think there are a lot of people who I've spoken with who are immigrants, and they've been here for a long time, but they still haven't found their way to nonprofit community giving yet, as opposed to you having fundraising experience, which is wonderful, bless you. And, and again, for you to have started your own nonprofit, that's not really the norm, I would say, which is why I wanted to feature you. So for people who are just curious, they feel like, I've been so blessed, I love being in this country, I'm living the American dream, but it feels like something is missing. You know, I have the car, I have the house, I have, you know, all my toys and making great money, but something, it still feels a little empty and I want to do more. And I know there are a lot of women out there who are asking that question. So I would love to hear from you if you really have like one solid or two very concrete, tangible things that they can do just to get started and build that momentum.
Sure. I mean, I can share. One I would say is really get involved and try things. So you may not feel what you're passionate about, think about what you're passionate about, and if you're not so sure about that, try a few causes. It's okay if you don't correlate, don't start questioning yourself. I think fundamentally people second guess themselves and they're more critical of themselves than actually the external person. So I think it's not a bad idea if you're still sort of figuring things out to just take a step back, try a few things out, and come back to yourself and be like, okay, that was a little disappointing, but this one is very encouraging. I like to work with this team of people. Sometimes the reason why you choose any place is two things. You have to believe in the mission. The mission has to resonate with who you are and what you want to get out of life. And so that journey might take 2 months for someone and 20 years for someone. It's never going to be the same. So just don't give up and don't get disappointed. I think the key thing as immigrants we all have in this country, and not necessarily as immigrants, as human beings, we're resilient. And I would say that if I am here today, it's not because there were any shortage of challenges or roadblocks. It's because for me, it was unconditional pillar of strength that my parents have been, and just being like, keep going forward, just look ahead and keep going forward. So that's what I would share with them is be resilient, don't get disappointed, just keep your path forward and just keep moving every step of the day.
Great. Vivienne?
I think I would say, I think your one point, I almost heard 2 points in there too. One point is how do you fit in and feel a sense of belonging? And almost the second point is, what do you do, which is a give back. So first on the how do you fit in, if you're still at that point, I think find something that you love that's easy to bond across culture. Food, music, those are two things that either through, depending on age, school choir, a senior center, community choir, cooking classes, just go to those places and share food, share the love, share what the history of the food behind, why you know how to cook that recipe. All that I think just binds people. And so that may, to me, be the easiest language to kind of cut across.
So get out of your home.
Get out of your home. And sometimes I think depending on where you live, get to know your neighbor. My in-laws, I love them. They live in LA. They've moved here in the 80s as well. I think their English was even weaker at that time. Now they can speak, decent English. They reached out to the neighbors. They were so friendly. And this Caucasian couple across the street, they've become best friends like for the last 40 years. They've helped each other out. And you can tell that the communication isn't, of course, not 100%, but they get each other and they care about each other. And I think it's, to hope that people can care for you, you also need to reach out and show that, hey, I'm part of you and I want to know you, and sit across, the table like this and then have that conversation. The other part about giving back. First, I want to say there's sometimes I've heard people kind of talk about the Asian, maybe more East Asian culture as being, not as generous. But I know that is wrong, but I think the misconception comes from a casualness of generosity. It's like, because we have such wide extended family, right? Uncle so-and-so's third cousin needs a car. Okay, well, I was going to sell my car, but you can have it. These things go on.
That's a very good point.
And it's just not documented.
Right.
And so then
that's
here
a very good point.
You are very formal because we can deduct.
And I am so upset that we have to wrap up. We need to continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And in fact, that's my invitation to the audience, that I think now that Vivienne and Meena were so generous to share their stories, I think we would love to hear from you, those of you who are watching, because we've talked about so many wonderful things and I wish we can keep talking. But I'm curious to know, what's one thing that may have resonated with you and what action are you inspired to take? So let's continue the conversation. And please leave a comment at youbelongherefoundation.org, because You Belong Here is committed to infuse a plethora of positive immigrant women's stories and start new conversations in our community. I am Porcia Chen Silverberg. Thank you for watching, and remember, you deserve to be seen, be heard, and belong, because you belong here. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. This is great.
I know, I want to keep talking.
Whether you're dead, broke, or rich from inheritance, doesn't really matter, we're made of the same sediment. Whether you got a family or single parenting, or you're Asian, African, European, or American, whether you pray to God or atheist is irrelevant, 'cause what you got inside is the same as all your brethren.